Okay, hello everybody. This will be, I think, the last of these kind of assignment help videos that I'll do. I'll try to make this brief, but you know how I yap a lot, so bear with me. This is the transition plan. A couple questions have come in already on it. Looks like nobody's started it, which is completely fine. It's Thursday morning right now. So I happen to be in the office, which makes it easy to upload these videos compared to my slow DSL. So I'm going to go ahead and create this kind of walkthrough. There's some pieces of it that are a little confusing. There used to be a video, I think I created it years ago, and the template looked a little bit different back then, but now it looks like they still reference the video, but I can't seem to find it. If one of you sees the video on how to do this in live text, or not live text, but in Blackboard, feel free to let me know where it is, but I can't find it. Probably an issue on my part. So let's take a look at this together. This is really about it's 6 sections. That's really what it is. The first one's the easiest. Put the student name in, and again, this is the same case that you've been working with. It's kind of a way to kind of look at one student from multiple perspectives. I mean, in this case, it's a transition plan, and the way to look at a transition plan is that IEP is for 1 year. The transition plan is multi-year. It's a multi-year fluid document, and so what you're doing is you start about age 14-ish, and then it goes on and potentially goes up through age 21 that you're still messing with it. And then when the student leaves school district, then they take this bad boy with them and they continue on. So you're planning ahead, age 25 projection and beyond. So you're thinking about the future beyond school, but you're planning the activities to get the student there now. So that's what this is really about. So if you take a look at this, the student information, this is where we begin. We ask about strengths, we ask about interests. What are they interested in? What are their perceived strengths? What can they do well? Are they good social kids? Do they stay to task? Do they work hard? Do they persevere? Or do they have good resilience? Do they have a good attitude about things? Are they willing to try anything? Do they have natural skills in kind of physical types of activities versus more cognitive activities and so forth? So what are the things that they're... Now, some of this is you're going to fill in the blank because the case may not provide enough that you really feel super comfortable with it. But for me, as long as it makes sense, I'm happy. So I'm pretty flexible on these two especially, student strengths and student interests. Now, the assessments. This is 4 assessments that you think would be useful. So this is going to take a little bit of Googling on your part if you don't already have these. But I can give you an example of one. So in the last 2 weeks, I've administered the Woodcock-Johnson, which is an achievement test to a student. And I did this kind of as a favor type thing on the side. And some of you know about what the Woodcock-Johnson is, but an achievement test is really looking at their reading, their math, their writing skills, and then some additional types of knowledge in the humanities and so forth. But it's very skill-oriented. It's achievement-based. So how well do they read? How fast do they go through basic computational problems and math facts? How well do they work with word problems that deal with a little bit more advanced concepts and things like that? So that is a good example of a decent test that you might want to administer to find out where the student is achievement and academically. There's also stuff like transition planning inventory. There's some more specific types of things for visual issues like the Pitcher Peabody vocabulary test and with vocabulary and issues with speech as well, usually where that used. And so you pick the assessments that work for you, and then I would just expect to see a very short statement after each one of these assessments that says, here's the reason why I picked this one. So transition planning inventory, because I wanted to understand what their strengths were and the kinds of transition skills we're planning for. Bam, it's pretty simple. Now the next 4 are identical in structure, but I would suggest to you, we should always move this to the end, the course of study you do last, and I'll explain that in a minute. So let's go ahead and skip down to employment. It's the exact same structure for all 4 of these, and there are spots for 5 goals. Now, I think the rubric, if they used the rubric I created years ago, I should probably check that real quick. The rubric is right in here. Now, in the rubric, it says you have to do 4 goals. Yep, that's what I wrote years ago. So they kept it. So you do have spots for 5. If you feel the need to fill 5, it's fine, but you really need to do 4. And each one of the goals has, it's basically an outcome, is what it is here. It is the vision for the student in the area. What is it that you expect as the outcome for that student with regards to this one? Then their action plan. So what are the steps to get there? And so this will be step one. They'll need to do while they're in high school, they need to take this kind of class. Step two, they need to come up with an internship at the school doing these things. Step three, they need to work on application skills and things like that in order to be able to obtain a job. Step four, work on research skills, understanding what kinds of jobs are out there. Step five, apply for a job while still in high school in the following areas. Step six, start transitioning into more full-time and long-term employment by examining these issues and so forth. So it's kind of like it's just a step-by-step is what it is to get from where the student is currently, age 14, 15, 16, wherever they are, all the way up until they've accomplished the outcome. That's what it is. Special ed consideration is this is where it is connected to special education. It can be connected to it by goals and goals and objectives that you identify. It could be by modifications and accommodations. It could be considerations with regard to even testing, if that's in accommodations for assessment and things like that. It could be system tech. It could be any of those types of things. I would just expect to see a statement there. So in the case of our example we just gave, and let's say it's getting a job at a grocery store as a stocking clerk, is the outcome. And then you've listed the steps where they've done some stuff in high school and then they do some stuff outside of high school. Then in special education, you might list that they're going to have a social skills class that they're going to take in high school in order to be able to work on getting along with customers and fellow employees. And then maybe they're also going to have some outcomes related to that they will understand an appropriate relationship between employee and employer. Another goal related to employee and other employees, and another goal related to employees and customers. And so that's where that is. And then agencies responsible or anybody that's involved in the goals itself. So in this case, it would be in the case of our grocery store, it would be probably somebody representing that grocery store or that grocery store chain. Might be like job shadow coach or people that are helping with the kind of the job training part of it. It could be a special education person, and it certainly is the kid and likely the family. So Robert's family, special ed teacher, representative of grocery store, and whoever else. And so you list those individuals there because we want to make sure that they're engaged in that particular outcome. All right, so now that you know what the structure looks like, and there's some guidelines kind of at the top and at the bottom for each aspect of this. This one is employment. So employment has two parts. There's employment that are kind of the hard skills. I want to work at a grocery store, need to stock shelves, I need to be able to understand sequencing of numbers or alphabetizing or locations, be able to read signs. So like here's produce, here's this, here's that, whatever it is. So and there's that. There's also even just the physical act of lifting up to a certain amount of poundage weight in order to be able to stock the shelves itself. So those are hard skills related to grocery store work. But there's also soft skills, appropriate dress, getting along with employees, and customers, getting to work on time, understanding paychecks, being able to apply for a job, being able to interview for a job, sending a follow-up note saying thank you. But these are all the types of things that if you're a college professor, a toll booth operator, a lawyer, a teacher, a grocery store stocker, it doesn't matter what you are, these are the kinds of things that everybody needs to be able to do. So that's the employment section. So there's 4 goals here. One of them could be get a job at a grocery store. The other 3 could be how to obtain a job and do interviewing skills and stuff. Another one could be on getting along socially with people that they would have to run into in this job. And a third one could be related to something else related to getting paychecks and how to deal with that. So there's those. Then the next section, we're going to go a little faster now, is community experiences. This is anything having to do with where they live, who they live near, how they deal with landlords, any of that kind of stuff, paying rent, understanding that. It's recreational experiences. So what do they do with their free time? We cannot neglect recreation and leisure. It's pretty important. And by the way, this is one of the first places and only places in public environments, public school environments, where you can ask the question, do you want to go to church? Because this is that is a consideration of recreation and leisure. And so it's making good decisions, healthy living, taking a couple of fun cooking classes or art classes at the YMCA or the local Parks and Rec, whatever it might be. And then the other things are kind of social relationships with people around the community. So it's even dealing with banks, grocery stores, garages to get your car fixed, those kinds of broad areas. Now, some of this bleeds over into daily and independent living, but it's still a community experience. So how they live in their community. Transportation is usually an easy one to start with because most people that have more severe cognitive disabilities aren't necessarily able to drive as well because they can't make the decisions necessary. Not everybody, but some. It's reasonably common, and so you would want to make sure that they can deal with the challenges of public transportation, taxis, whether they're going to be riding the bike, or using public transportation like a bus or something like that. And so being able to deal with those kinds of things. And we're talking about generalizing those skills. So that's community living. The third one is daily living skills and needs, and this is anything happening in the home. So dealing with your income, dealing with grocery shopping, dealing with cleaning, hygiene, emergency things, like when do you call the police, when do you not call the police, when do you call an ambulance, when do you not call an ambulance. It's all those independent living things. And if you think about, all of you live in some apartment or house or something, if you think about where you live and all the things you have to do, a lot of those things you've done intuitively, you figured it out. Some individuals don't have that capability. They need to be more expressly and explicitly taught how to do these things. I wish I was taught on some of these things too, even doing laundry, cooking, basic stuff. So there's a whole bunch of choices for this one, goals 1 through 4 under and that one. Now the last section up here at the top, so I'm going to the first one last, is the course of study. And that one is where you are identifying any types of what they call, it's what they're referring to as post-secondary education. But post-secondary education isn't just community college, or any of that stuff. It actually is, it's a series of other things too. It's community college, it's training programs, apprenticeship, it's technical training, it's going in for 3 weeks and learning this skill and then you're ready. I mean, it's anything where they're quote unquote learning after school. Now, this may be a little bit harder to do, and I usually I'm okay with including some things in high school that are outside of the standard programmatic offerings. For example, like a social skills class or something like that. And on top of that, there's dual enrollment and voc tech and things that are just not quite the same as K-12 traditional schooling. And so there's some flexibility here, but you're going to try to identify 4 goals related to something that they're going to do with their free time after school, either for vocational purposes, I want to learn the skill so I can get this job, or it could be, I want to learn to do ballroom dancing. I really love the idea of dancing. I would like to find a partner and a friend to go do that with, girlfriend, whatever. And so I'm going to go learn how to be a ballroom dancer. And then I can do that with my spare time. Or I want to go to an art class. Or I want to do sports stuff. And there's some stuff that is very much geared towards obviously special needs. Here in Lynchburg, we have something called a Challenge Sports Exchange. We also have the Special Olympics and other things that are very appropriate for that. But there's also, frankly, a lot of activities that are just inclusive, which is what we really want too. Nothing wrong with those other two, but there's nothing wrong with somebody playing in a league soccer if they're pretty good at soccer and they enjoy doing it with everybody else. Why not? So these are the kinds of maybe trainings that you want to consider. So it's more traditional, formalized education opportunities, but it's also kind of extending quality of life and fun activities also on the other side. Okay, so that's really what you're going to be doing. Is you're going to be replacing it in there. So this has more writing than the IEP. There's a little bit more of a complex element to this in that it's long term and it's thinking about like 7 years potentially instead of just 1. And so think of it this way, and I probably should have started with this. This transition plan really represents IEPs for multiple years. And so that's why it's a little bit fluid, because people's strengths and interests and things change over time. And so I may be all gung-ho on being a grocery store stocker when I'm 15, but when I'm 18, maybe I'm like, dude, I want to be a waiter. That's my dream, is to be a waiter. And so you shift. And so this document is somewhat fluid, but what it represents is a long-term planning document in order to connect your IEPs together to fulfill the vocational, daily living, community living, and even educational dreams and goals and outcomes of that particular student. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to you. Hopes it brings it all together for you. I will answer one question. One of you asked about doing anything in the introduction. You don't. This is just, the introduction is just giving you information. That's it. You start with the goals on each one of them. Okay, good luck to you.